January 23rd, 1945. 2,147 hours. Colmar, France. The temperature hovers just above freezing. Cold enough that breath vapor betrays every exhale. Cold enough that rifle actions need careful handling to prevent metal-on-metal noise that carries through still night air. Sergeant Michael Brennan lies prone on the third floor of a bombed-out textile factory, his body positioned behind a pile of rubble that once was an exterior wall, his M1903 Springfield rifle resting on what looks like debris, but is actually a carefully selected fragment of hollow clay brick. The brick, roughly 8 inches long and shaped like an elongated U-channel, cradles his rifle's forestock with almost perfect stability, dampening the micro-movements that plague unsupported shooting positions. Beyond his position, perhaps 400 yards across cratered industrial wasteland, German forces control a railway depot they're using to funnel reinforcements into the Colmar pocket, the last German-held territory west of the Rhine. American forces have been trying to eliminate that depot for 3 weeks through artillery and air strikes, achieving nothing except alerting the Germans to increase security. Now Battalion Command is trying a different approach. One sniper, darkness, patience, and the belief that eliminating key personnel will disrupt operations more effectively than destroying infrastructure. Brennan has 8 hours of darkness to prove the concept works or fail trying. The hollow brick under his rifle, dismissed by every officer who saw it as improvised nonsense unworthy of serious shooters, is about to become the difference between success and another failed operation. Michael Brennan grew up in Philadelphia's industrial districts, in neighborhoods where factory work was inherited like eye color, where sons followed fathers into mills and foundries without considering alternatives. His father worked as a machinist at a locomotive factory, a precision tradesman who understood tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch and the relationship between material properties and functional performance. Young Michael spent after-school hours in his father's home workshop, learning to read micrometers and calipers, understanding how proper tool support transformed rough approximation into precision work. His father taught him that accuracy wasn't about effort or intention. It was about eliminating variables, creating stability, and removing the human factors that introduced error into mechanical processes. When you machine a part, you don't hold it in your hands and hope for accuracy. You fixture it properly, eliminate movement, and let the tool do what it's designed to do without interference. By 15, Brennan could hold tolerances that professional machinists respected, not through exceptional skill, but through obsessive attention to work holding and tool support. He understood intuitively that the foundation precision was stability, that no amount of talent compensated for inadequate support systems. The Army drafted Brennan in early 1943, processing him through basic training where his mechanical aptitude and steady hands earned assignment to an infantry rifle company with notation that he showed potential for specialized marksmanship training. He qualified as expert rifleman during basic, not through exceptional natural shooting ability, but through systematic application of his father's lessons about stability and support. While other recruits struggled with unsupported firing positions, Brennan instinctively sought ways to stabilize his rifle using available terrain, equipment, and improvised supports. His range instructors noticed, but didn't necessarily approve. Army marksmanship doctrine emphasized supported, prone, kneeling, and standing positions using specific techniques codified in field manuals. Brennan's constant improvisation with non-standard supports, using sandbags and unconventional configurations, modifying bipods with additional bracing, even using his helmet as a rifle rest in ways that technically violated equipment regulations, marked him as effective but undisciplined. He advanced to sniper training, where instructors emphasize field-expedient shooting supports, but within doctrinal parameters that stress universally applicable techniques rather than situation-specific improvisation. Brennan absorbed the approved methods while privately continuing his experiments with unconventional rifle rests, recognizing that doctrine prioritized teachable consistency over optimal performance. By January 1945, Brennan's unit was fighting in eastern France, part of the brutal campaign to eliminate the Colmar pocket and clear German forces from territory west of the Rhine. The fighting was urban and industrial, conducted in factory districts, railway yards, and workers' housing that had been systematically destroyed by months of combat. The terrain presented unique challenges for snipers accustomed to operating in open country or natural vegetation. Rubble-strewn urban environments offered countless firing positions, but few that provided stable rifle support without extensive preparation. Sandbags were effective but conspicuous and time-consuming to emplace. Bipods worked on flat surfaces, but were nearly useless on the irregular rubble piles that characterized most positions. Standard field expedient supports like logs or packed earth were rarely available in industrial ruins. Snipers were forced to shoot from unstable positions that degraded accuracy, particularly at extended ranges where minor movements translated into significant point-of-impact shifts. The result was that American snipers were effective at short to medium ranges, but struggled with precision engagement beyond 300 yards, exactly the range where they'd be most valuable for interdicting German logistics operations. Brennan had been thinking about this problem since arriving in the Colmar sector, studying the rubble-filled urban landscape and recognizing material opportunities that other snipers overlooked. The destroyed factories and workers' housing had been constructed primarily from hollow clay bricks, structural masonry products that provided good insulation and load-bearing capacity, while remaining relatively lightweight. When buildings collapsed under artillery fire, these bricks often broke into U-shaped or channel-shaped fragments that were structurally stable but hollow on one side. Brennan recognized them as nearly perfect improvised rifle rests. The hollow channel could cradle a rifle's forestock, providing three-point contact that resisted lateral movement while allowing precise elevation adjustment through shimming. The clay material was dense enough to absorb vibration, but soft enough that it wouldn't damage rifle finishes. The irregular, debris-like appearance meant brick fragments positioned as rifle rests were visually indistinguishable from surrounding rubble, providing concealment that purpose-built shooting supports couldn't match. Most importantly, hollow brick fragments were everywhere in urban combat zones, requiring no special supply chain or preparation time. A sniper could select appropriate fragments on-site, position them in minutes, and achieve rifle stability comparable to purpose-built bench rest equipment. Brennan had tried to explain the concept to his platoon sergeant during a tactical planning meeting, bringing sample brick fragments and demonstrating how they provided superior rifle support compared to standard field expedient methods. The sergeant's response was dismissive, bordering on hostile. "Brennan, we're not building a shooting range. We're conducting combat operations in hostile territory. Use your sandbags. Use your pack. Use approved field supports. I'm not authorizing you to haul broken bricks around like some kind of masonry collector. Those things are everywhere because they're debris, garbage, stuff that gets cleared away, not equipment. Use proper supports or I'll find someone else for this mission." The sergeant's objection wasn't about effectiveness, which he couldn't evaluate without testing, but about appearance and deviation from recognized methods. Broken bricks didn't look like proper military equipment. Therefore, they couldn't be effective military equipment. It was circular reasoning that Brennan recognized as institutional thinking rather than tactical analysis. He nodded, accepted the guidance, and then spent the next 2 days collecting and testing hollow brick fragments until he identified several pieces with optimal dimensions and structural characteristics for rifle support. The mission brief for January 23rd was straightforward in concept, but extraordinarily difficult in execution. German forces were using the railway depot as a logistics hub, moving supplies and reinforcements under cover of darkness when American air superiority couldn't interfere. Intelligence indicated that depot operations were coordinated by a small command element, probably 8 to 12 personnel, including an officer, senior NCOs, and specialists like trained schedulers and logistics coordinators. These personnel operated from a partially intact station building adjacent to the rail platforms, using cover positions that protected them from artillery, but required them to move between the building and active rail platforms during loading and scheduling operations. American planners believed that eliminating these key personnel would disrupt depot operations more effectively than trying to destroy infrastructure Germans could rapidly repair. The mission was assigned to Brennan with simple parameters: infiltrate into effective firing range, establish a concealed position, and eliminate as many command personnel as possible during a single night's operations. Success will be measured not by body count, but by observable disruption to German logistics operations over subsequent days. Brennan selected his firing position after 3 days of careful observation, using binoculars from distant American-held buildings. He had identified a destroyed textile factory approximately 420 yards from the German depot, a range that was long enough to complicate German response, but short enough for precise night shooting with his Springfield and the M73 telescopic sight he'd carefully zeroed. The factory's third floor provided elevation advantage, while the building's skeletal remains offered multiple concealed approach and withdrawal routes. Most importantly, the floor was littered with hollow brick fragments from collapsed interior walls, giving him abundant selection of rifle rests without needing to carry anything that might betray his purpose during infiltration. He infiltrated during pre-dawn darkness on January 23rd, moving through no man's land between American and German positions using techniques learned from months of urban combat. By 0530 hours, he was in position, carefully constructing his firing point using rubble for overhead concealment and selecting the optimal hollow brick fragment for rifle support. The brick he finally chose was nearly perfect, roughly 8 inches long, 4 inches wide, with a hollow channel approximately 2 inches deep that ran the fragment's full length. The walls were uniform thickness, providing stable support without tendency to rock or shift. He positioned it on a flat section of concrete floor, tested stability by applying pressure from multiple angles, then shimmed one end with small stone chips until the brick provided exactly the elevation he needed for engaging targets at the depot. He rested his Springfield's forestock in the channel, immediately feeling the difference compared to conventional supports. The rifle sat with absolute stability, the three-point contact along the channel eliminating the lateral wobble that plagued even well-constructed sandbag rests. When he applied slight pressure to adjust aim, the rifle tracked smoothly without the jerky resistance or dead spots that characterize inferior supports. He could maintain precise aim point while working the bolt action, the rifle returning naturally to battery without requiring complete re-aim after each shot. It was a kind of stability he'd achieved on machinist workbenches, but never before in field conditions. The hollow brick rest transformed his rifle from a handheld weapon into something approaching a precision instrument. Brennan spent the daylight hours in motionless observation, mapping German patterns and identifying likely targets. The depot operated continuously, but activity peaked during darkness, when German commanders felt safer from American air attack. He noted personnel moving between the station building and rail platforms, tracked what appeared to be supervisory figures directing work details, identified one individual whose uniform and bearing suggested officer rank. He also noted that German security was oriented primarily toward ground-level threats, sentries watching approaches rather than scanning upper floors of distant ruined buildings. The Germans had grown complacent operating in what they considered secure rear areas, comfortable enough that officers and senior personnel moved without the tactical caution that would be routine closer front lines. That complacency would be their fatal vulnerability. Brennan had 8 targets in mind before he fired his first shot, a priority sequence based on apparent rank and supervisory function. If everything worked as planned, he'd systematically decapitate the depot's command structure before German forces even understood they were under attack. Full darkness arrives at 1847 hours, winter night falling quickly and bringing temperatures that drop toward the mid-20s Fahrenheit. Brennan remains completely still, conserving body heat and waiting for depot operations to reach peak activity levels. He'd calculated his engagement window carefully. German work parties would be most active between 2,100 and 300 hours, the period when most supply trains were scheduled and when supervisory personnel will be most exposed directing operations. He'd planned his shooting sequence to maximize confusion and minimize German ability to identify his firing position. Night shooting at 400 yards was technically challenging under the best conditions. With iron sights, it would be nearly impossible. Even with his scope, success depended on absolute rifle stability, precise holdovers for a bullet drop at extended range, and careful shot discipline that avoided telegraph patterns German observers could use to backtrack his position. The hollow brick rest would provide the stability. His training and experience would provide everything else. At 2,147 hours, his first target presents a German officer, identifiable by distinctive cap and gait that suggests command authority, exits the station building and walks toward a rail platform where a supply train is being unloaded. He's moving without tactical caution, focused on a logistics operation rather than threat assessment. Range is approximately 420 yards. Angle is slightly downward from Brennan's elevated position. Wind is negligible, but cold air density will slightly affect bullet trajectory. Brennan settles the crosshairs on his target center mass, accounting for bullet drop at range by holding approximately 18 inches high. His breathing slows and becomes automatic. His trigger finger takes up slack in the Springfield's crisp military trigger. The rifle, supported perfectly by the hollow brick rest, shows none of the micro-tremor that normally accompanies even well-supported field positions. The shot breaks clean and surprising, exactly how precision shots should feel. The rifle's recoil is straight back against Brennan's shoulder, the hollow brick rest preventing any lateral movement that would complicate rapid follow-up shots. He works the bolt smoothly, chambering a fresh round while keeping his scope on the target area. The German officer collapses instantly, killed by a shot he never heard coming from a position he had no reason to suspect existed. The soldiers around him react with confusion rather than tactical response, looking at their fallen commander without immediately recognizing rifle fire. The sound of Brennan's shot, traveling 400 yards through cold night air and dispersing among factory buildings, provides no clear directional information. By the time German soldiers begin seeking cover and scanning for threats, Brennan has already acquired his second target. A German NCO, recognizable by uniform details visible through the scope even in limited light, is shouting orders and trying to organize response. He's standing in the open on the rail platform, focused on the fallen officer, an immediate area rather than considering threats from distant positions. Brennan's second shot drops him mid-sentence, the heavy .30-06 round striking upper torso and eliminating him before his tactical brain can process the situation. 2 targets down in approximately 40 seconds. Depot command structure already decapitated. The German response is now escalating from confusion to alarm. Soldiers are taking cover. Officers are shouting orders. Security personnel are scanning possible firing positions, but they're looking in wrong directions, checking nearby buildings and ground-level approaches, while missing the distant factory position that Brennan occupies. Night shooting produces minimal muzzle flash with proper technique, and the Springfield's relatively long barrel, making visual detection difficult even for observers watching the right area. Sound propagation in urban terrain is notoriously deceptive, echoing off multiple surfaces and arriving from apparent directions that don't correspond to actual source locations. Brennan has planned his engagement to exploit both limitations. He fires again, targeting a German soldier who appears to be senior enlisted based on behavior and position. The shot is more difficult. Target partially concealed behind railway equipment, requiring precise aim point to thread the gap. The hollow brick rest makes the shot possible, providing stability that allows Brennan to hold a precise aim point for the seconds needed to time his shot during target movement. The German drops, killed by a shot that seemed to come from nowhere. Over the next 90 minutes, Brennan systematically eliminates 5 more German personnel at the depot, each shot carefully selected for maximum disruption of command and control. He targets supervisors, coordinators, anyone whose behavior suggests leadership or specialized function. He avoids shooting at common soldiers or work details, recognizing that killing junior personnel would generate casualties without corresponding operational disruption. His discipline extends to shot pacing. He never fires more than 2 shots within 5 minutes, allowing German security forces to exhaust themselves searching areas he's not occupying, while preventing them from establishing pattern recognition that might help locate his actual position. The hollow brick rest makes this patience tactically feasible. With conventional field expedient supports, holding a precise aim point for extended periods will be nearly impossible, forcing rush shots that sacrificed accuracy for opportunity. The brick's superior stability lets Brennan wait for optimal shot presentation, taking only high-probability engagements that justify ammunition expenditure and position compromise risk. By 23:20 hours, depot operations have completely ceased. German personnel are undercover. Security forces are deployed in defensive positions, and a logistics operation that should be processing supply trains is ground to a halt. The supply train that was being unloaded when Brennan began shooting sits incomplete on the platform, its cargo half-transferred and vulnerable to artillery fire if American forces had assets available to exploit the opportunity. More importantly, The depot's command structure has been effectively destroyed. 8 German soldiers are dead, including 1 officer and multiple senior NCOs whose experience and authority can't be quickly replaced. The psychological impact compounds the tactical effect. German forces throughout the depot are now operating under the assumption that American snipers can reach them at night from impossible distances, that no position is safe, that even routine movements carry potentially lethal risk. The psychological pressure will degrade operational effectiveness for days or weeks, forcing Germans to implement security measures that slow logistics operations and divert combat personnel to guard duties. Brennan begins his extraction at 2,335 hours, carefully withdrawing from his firing position and leaving the hollow brick rest position exactly as he found it, indistinguishable from surrounding rubble. He moves through the factory's ruins using predetermined routes, exits through a collapsed wall section, and begins infiltration back to American lines. The journey takes 4 hours of careful movement through contested territory, but by 0340 hours, he's reporting to battalion headquarters with a mission summary that will reshape American tactical thinking about urban sniper operations. His report emphasizes not just the successful target elimination, but the critical role that proper rifle support played in achieving precision night shooting at extended range. He describes a hollow brick rest concept, demonstrates with samples he collected during extraction, and makes the case that urban rubble environments contain abundant improvised support materials that outperform standard field expedient methods if snipers are trained to recognize and employ them properly. The immediate institutional response is skeptical predictability. Officers question whether the brick rest made significant difference versus standard techniques, suggest that results might have been achievable with conventional supports, imply that Brennan's success reflects personal skill rather than equipment innovation. But the mission results can't be dismissed. 8 confirmed kills, complete disruption of German depot operations, 0 American casualties, achieved by 1 sniper using 1 rifle and improvised support equipment that cost nothing and required no supply chain. The mathematics are compelling even for skeptical staff officers. Within days, other snipers in the battalion are experimenting with hollow brick rests, testing Brennan's techniques, and confirming that rubble fragments do indeed provide superior rifle stability compared to approved field supports. Word spreads through informal networks that connect snipers across different units, the kind of tactical gossip that moves faster than official communications. By early February, hollow brick rests and similar improvised supports using structural rubble are being employed by American snipers throughout urban combat zones in France and Germany. The broader tactical evolution extends beyond specific brick rest technique. Brennan's innovation demonstrated that urban rubble environments, generally considered hostile to precision shooting, actually contained abundant materials for constructing superior shooting supports if soldiers understood what they were looking for and how to employ it. This recognition triggered systematic investigation of other improvised equipment opportunities in urban combat. Engineers began cataloging structural materials commonly found in European urban construction and assessing their tactical applications. Training programs started teaching soldiers to evaluate rubble and debris as potential resource rather than obstacle. The conceptual shift was significant. Previous doctrine treated destroyed urban terrain as degraded operating environment requiring adaptation and acceptance of reduced capability. New thinking recognized that urban destruction created material opportunities unavailable in natural terrain if soldiers applied creative problem-solving to equipment challenges. Statistical analysis conducted after the Colmar campaign provides concrete assessment of hollow brick rest effectiveness. Snipers employing brick or similar improvised rubble supports showed approximately 37% improvement in first-shot hit probability at ranges beyond 300 yards compared to snipers using standard field expedient supports. This improvement was most pronounced in night shooting, where rifle stability became the primary limiting factor for accuracy. The enhanced stability also enabled snipers to engage at longer ranges than previously considered practical, extending effective engagement envelopes from 300 yards to 450 yards under favorable conditions. This range extension had meaningful tactical implications. Longer engagement ranges meant snipers could operate from positions that were more difficult for enemy forces to identify and counterattack, improving survivability while maintaining effectiveness. The equipment cost for this performance improvement was precisely zero. Brick fragments required no manufacturing, no supply chain, no maintenance or specialized training beyond teaching soldiers what to look for and how to position supports properly. Michael Brennan survived the war, returning to Philadelphia in late 1945 with a Bronze Star and a reputation as one of the most effective snipers in his division. He declined offers to remain in service developing sniper training programs, recognizing that his practical innovations didn't translate well into institutional doctrine that required standardization and reproducibility across diverse environments. He returned to machinist work, eventually opening his own precision machine shop that specialized in tooling for aerospace applications. His civilian career applied the same principles that made him an effective combat sniper, understanding that precision required proper fixturing and support, that no amount of skill compensated for inadequate work holding. That success came from eliminating variables rather than compensating for them. He rarely discussed his wartime service, except with other veterans who understood the context. Neighbors knew he'd been a sniper, had done something noteworthy in France, but the details remained private. Brennan had no interest in being celebrated for killing people. What he'd accomplished in Colmar was applying his father's machinist lessons to solve tactical problems the Army couldn't address through standard approaches. For military historians studying tactical innovation and equipment evolution, Brennan's story represents an important case study in how practical solutions emerge from field necessity rather than institutional research and development. His hollow brick rest wasn't invented through systematic engineering analysis or controlled testing programs. It emerged from a soldier observing his operational environment, recognizing material properties that match functional requirements, and experimenting with field-expedient solutions until identifying optimal approaches. This bottom-up innovation pattern produces solutions that institutional processes typically miss because they solve problems that aren't recognized as solvable. Army doctrine accepted degraded sniper effectiveness in urban rubble environments as an inevitable cost of operating in destroyed terrain. Brennan questioned that assumption, looked for solutions in unlikely places, and developed technique that not only restored effectiveness, but actually exceeded capabilities achievable in natural terrain. The innovation required no new technology, no industrial development, no supply chain modifications. It required only observation, creative thinking, and willingness to test unconventional approaches. The post-war institutional response to improvised support techniques like Brennan's brick rest followed typical military patterns of selective adoption and formal distance. Sniper training programs began including instruction on evaluating and employing improvised rifle supports, acknowledging that field-expedient solutions often outperform standard equipment in specific circumstances. But the instruction remained general principles rather than specific techniques, teaching concepts like contact points, stability assessment, and vibration damping without endorsing particular materials or methods. This approach allowed the Army to benefit from field innovations while maintaining official separation from techniques that might appear unprofessional or improvised in ways that conflicted with institutional image. Modern sniper training continues this pattern. Students learn to assess environmental materials for shooting support applications, but the emphasis remains on principles rather than specific solutions. Hollow brick rests are occasionally mentioned in historical context, but rarely taught as deliberate technique, despite their proven effectiveness in appropriate circumstances. Contemporary military forces operating in urban environments continue to rediscover and apply variations on Brennan's basic insight. Special operations snipers and designated marksmen sometimes employ structural rubble as improvised shooting supports, particularly during extended surveillance missions where conventional equipment will be conspicuous or logistically impractical. These applications benefit from modern materials understanding and precision shooting knowledge that Brennan lacked, but the fundamental principle remains unchanged. Destroyed urban environments contain abundant materials suitable for precision rifle support if operators know what to look for and how to employ it. The technique remains specialist knowledge rather than mainstream doctrine, useful for soldiers who need maximum precision from improvised positions, but too situational for general training emphasis. Robert Brennan died in 2001 at age 78. His obituary noting military service and successful machine shop career, but providing minimal detail about specific wartime contributions. His children knew he'd been a sniper who'd done something innovative with improvised equipment, but he'd never discussed the details extensively. His grandchildren knew him as a patient craftsman who could achieve remarkable precision using basic tools and improvised fixtures, who believed that proper work setup was 90% of success in any precision task. The skills that made him an effective combat sniper, understanding of stability and support, recognition that equipment limitations could be overcome through creative problem solving, willingness to question why things must be done certain ways. These remained consistent throughout his life. The war hadn't created those capabilities. It provided context where they became tactically significant rather than workshop practices. The broader implications of Brennan's innovation extend beyond specific sniper techniques to fundamental questions about military innovation and institutional learning. His story demonstrates that effective solutions often exist in plain sight, overlooked because they don't match preconceptions about what military equipment should look like or how it should function. Broken bricks scattered through urban rubble registered as debris to officers reviewing Brennan's position. Garbage to be cleared rather than equipment to be employed. But those same fragments provided rifle stability that purpose-built shooting supports couldn't match in that specific environment. The disconnect between perceived value and actual utility reflects institutional thinking that prioritizes appearance and conformity, with established categories over pragmatic effectiveness. Military organizations struggle with this pattern. They need standardization for large-scale operations, but standardization can blind them to context-specific solutions that outperform standard approaches in particular situations. Modern military thinking about innovation increasingly emphasizes bottom-up development and rapid field adaptation, recognizing that soldiers facing tactical problems often identify solutions that institutional processes miss. But implementation remains challenging. Organizations built on hierarchy and standardization naturally resist innovations that emerge from junior personnel operating outside approved channels. Brennan succeeded because battlefield necessity created space for experimentation, and because his results were undeniable enough to overcome bureaucratic skepticism. But similar innovations proposed in peacetime training environments or garrison conditions would likely be rejected before receiving field trials. This suggests that military organizations learn and adapt most effectively under operational pressure, but struggle to maintain that flexibility during peacetime, when institutional inertia reasserts itself. What made Brennan's hollow brick rest particularly valuable was its universality within specific environmental context. Unlike innovations that require rare materials or unique circumstances, urban combat environments globally contain similar structural materials that can be employed using Brennan's basic principles. Hollow clay bricks are common construction materials throughout Europe, Asia, Middle East, and increasingly in developing regions. Concrete blocks, another common structural material, often break into shapes suitable for rifle support when buildings collapse. Even solid brick fragments can be stacked and arranged to create stable shooting rests. The technique scales across different urban environments because it exploits construction materials that are fundamentally similar regardless of specific regional building practices. This broad applicability distinguishes Brennan's innovation from context-specific solutions that work in particular circumstances but don't transfer to other operational environments. The historical irony is that Brennan's most significant contribution came from recognizing value in something that doctrine and institutional thinking taught soldiers to ignore. Military training emphasizes bringing proper equipment to accomplish missions, preparing thoroughly, maintaining gear to standard. This emphasis is usually appropriate and necessary, but it can also blind soldiers to improvise solutions that outperform standard equipment in specific circumstances. Brennan succeeded because he questioned the assumption that approved equipment was optimal, because he looked at rubble and saw opportunity rather than obstacle, because he was willing to test an idea that looked unprofessional and improvised to institutional observers. His willingness to appear unconventional, to use broken bricks while other snipers used approved equipment, that intellectual independence produced tactical advantage worth far more than maintaining appearances. Michael Brennan's hollow brick sniper rest solved one tactical problem in one urban campaign during one war. But the principle behind the solution, the recognition that destroyed environments contain material opportunities, that improvisation can outperform standardization, that questioning assumptions opens possibilities doctrine forecloses, Those insights remain relevant across decades and technological changes. Modern soldiers facing precision shooting challenges in urban combat can still benefit from understanding that rubble contains abundant support materials if they know what to look for. More broadly, military professionals facing any tactical challenge can benefit from questioning whether approved solutions are actually optimal or merely standardized, whether environmental materials offer capabilities that formal equipment doesn't provide, whether appearing unconventional might be worth tactical advantages that conformity sacrifices. Brennan's story teaches that innovation often requires looking past what things appear to be and recognizing what they could become, that the difference between debris and equipment is often just perspective and creative thinking. That lesson remains as valuable now as it was in a frozen factory in Colmar, where broken brick fragments became precision instruments that changed how snipers thought about their craft.